There's a place on Earth where crime is almost unheard of, not just low crime, not just reduced crime, one of the lowest crime rates in the world. You can leave your doors unlocked, your car running, your wallet on a park bench, and return to find everything exactly as you left it. Children walk to school alone through streets so safe that parents don't even think twice about it. But here's what will absolutely blow your mind. For most people, living there is almost impossible. This isn't some dystopian fiction or futuristic fantasy. This is a real country in modern Europe, where the government has some of the strictest residency requirements on the continent, where a significant portion of the population is wealthy, where the average GDP per capita reaches a staggering 49,000 euros, and where global corporations worth billions operate from buildings you could walk past in minutes. The most insane part? This country is so small that a marathon runner attempting a full 26.2-mile race would literally run out of country before reaching the finish line. You could walk from its southern border to its northern border in 5 hours. The entire nation has fewer people than a mid-sized American suburb, yet it wields economic power that would make entire states jealous. And here's the kicker that defies all logic. This microscopic nation has no airport, no army, very limited natural resources, and its public debt is among the lowest in Europe. Yet it's become one of the most exclusive addresses on the planet, where getting citizenship is harder than winning the lottery and more exclusive than joining the world's most elite clubs. Welcome to Andorra, Europe's best-kept secret and the world's most impossible country to call home. Nestled impossibly between France and Spain in the heart of the Pyrenees mountains, Andorra exists like a real-life fairy tale kingdom that somehow survived into the modern world. With just 80,000 residents scattered across 468 square kilometers of pristine mountain terrain, this microstate operates under rules so unique they seem designed by someone who decided to completely rewrite how countries work. Picture this. Every morning, as the sun rises over snow-capped peaks that look like they were painted by a master artist, something extraordinary happens. The population of Andorra doesn't just wake up, it nearly doubles. Thousands of people cross the borders from France and Spain every single day, not as tourists but as workers in what might be the world's most exclusive daily migration. These aren't refugees or desperate job seekers. These are highly skilled professionals, bankers, tech specialists, and luxury retail experts who commute to one of Europe's most sophisticated economies, then return to their home countries every evening like some kind of reverse Cinderella story. By 6 p.m., Andorra transforms back into an intimate mountain community where everyone knows everyone and the streets that bustled with international commerce become quiet enough to hear the mountain wind. The capital, Andorra la Vella, sits at 1,023 meters above sea level, making it the highest capital city in Europe. Walking through its streets feels like stepping into a parallel universe where medieval stone buildings house cutting-edge financial institutions, where luxury boutiques selling tax-free goods sit next to family-run restaurants that have served the same families for generations. But here's what makes your brain hurt. Despite being completely landlocked with no airport, no seaport, and no railway station, Andorra has become a global economic powerhouse. Every single person or product entering the country must pass through either France or Spain, yet this tiny nation has managed to create an economy so robust and exclusive that it attracts billions in international investment. Imagine waking up in a country where the morning commute includes people speaking Catalan, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and English, all before 9 a.m. Where the person serving your coffee might live in Barcelona, your banker might commute from Toulouse, and your tax advisor could be driving in from Perpignan. This is the daily reality of Andorra, where the workforce literally crosses international borders twice a day. But these aren't minimum wage jobs we're talking about. These are positions in private banking, wealth management, luxury retail, and high-tech industries that pay salaries competitive with Switzerland and Monaco. The reason for this daily exodus is beautifully simple and completely logical. Andorra offers some of the world's most attractive tax rates for businesses and high earners. But the cost of living, particularly housing, has become so exclusive that many professionals choose to live in neighbouring countries where their euros stretch further. A typical day in Andorra la Vella starts with the morning rush that would make any city planner scratch their head. Traffic builds at the French and Spanish borders as thousands of professionals make their way to offices housed in buildings that look like they belong in a medieval fairy tale, but contain technology that rivals Silicon Valley. By 10 a.m., the transformation is complete. This tiny mountain nation becomes a bustling international business hub where deals worth millions are negotiated in multiple languages, where private banks manage assets for clients from around the globe, and where luxury boutiques serve customers who fly in specifically for tax-free shopping. The lunch hour reveals another layer of Andorra's impossible character. Restaurants serve everything from traditional Catalan cuisine to international fusion, often with ingredients sourced from France and Spain, but prepared by chefs who might live in 3 different countries throughout the week. Business meetings happen over meals that cost less than similar dining in Paris or Barcelona, yet the conversations involve financial decisions that impact global markets. But here's where it gets truly surreal. As evening approaches, this international business hub begins its daily disappearing act. By 7 p.m., the borders see the reverse migration as thousands of professionals return to their homes in France and Spain, leaving behind a community so intimate that locals joke they need to check the weather in 3 countries just to plan their weekend. Living in Andorra means existing in a cultural space that shouldn't logically work but somehow creates magic. The official language is Catalan, but walk down any street and you'll hear Spanish, French, and Portuguese in equal measure. Children grow up trilingual by default, not through formal education programs but simply because their daily life requires it. The cultural identity here defies every rule about how small nations preserve their heritage. Instead of building walls to protect local traditions, Andorra has created a cultural fusion that feels both ancient and completely modern. Traditional Catalan festivals happen alongside French wine tastings and Spanish flamenco performances, often in the same weekend. But here's what makes anthropologists' heads spin. Despite this cultural mixing, Andorra has maintained distinct traditions that exist nowhere else on Earth. The country operates under a unique co-principality system where 2 foreign heads of state, the President of France and the Bishop of Urgell in Spain, serve as joint princes. This means Andorra is simultaneously ruled by a Catholic bishop and a secular French president, a political arrangement so bizarre it sounds like the setup to a joke, yet it's worked for over 700 years. Shopping culture here creates its own anthropological phenomenon. Andorra's duty-free status has created a retail environment where luxury goods from around the world are sold at prices that attract shoppers from across Europe. But this isn't just about saving money. It's created a unique social ritual where families from France and Spain make regular pilgrimages to Andorra, turning shopping into a cultural exchange. The most fascinating aspect of Andorran culture might be how it handles identity. Citizens here don't just identify as Andorran, they identify as European in the most literal sense. They use euros, but aren't in the European Union. They have no military, but are protected by both France and Spain. They speak Catalan, but conduct international business in multiple languages. It's like they've figured out how to be simultaneously local and global in a way that makes traditional nationalism seem outdated. Here's where Andorra becomes truly impossible to understand using conventional economic theory. This tiny nation, with very limited natural resources, no seaport, no airport, and no railway, has created an economy that generates more wealth per capita than most countries in the world. The secret lies in what economists call regulatory arbitrage. Essentially, Andorra has positioned itself as the perfect legal and financial bridge between different European systems. While maintaining its independence, it's created tax and banking laws that attract international wealth while remaining compliant with European Union regulations. The numbers are staggering and sound completely made up. Andorra's GDP per capita hovers around €49,000, but that figure is misleading because it doesn't account for the massive amount of wealth managed here but owned by non-residents. The country's banks manage billions in assets, which is a huge multiple of the country's entire GDP. It's like a financial magic trick where the money appears, gets managed, generates profits, and then disappears back into the global economy. But here's what makes economists' calculators smoke. Andorra's corporate tax rate is just 10%, and personal income tax is progressive, capped at 10% for residents with higher incomes. Yet the country maintains infrastructure, healthcare and education systems that rival much larger, higher-taxed nations. They've essentially figured out how to provide first-world services with third-world tax rates. The retail sector adds another layer of economic impossibility. Andorra's duty-free status means luxury goods, electronics, alcohol and tobacco are sold at prices significantly lower than neighbouring countries. This has created a shopping tourism industry that generates over €1 billion annually, more than many countries' entire economies. The most mind-bending aspect is how this economic model creates a feedback loop of exclusivity. The low taxes attract wealthy residents and businesses, which drives up property values, which makes housing unaffordable for average earners, which maintains the exclusivity, which attracts more wealthy residents. It's like they've accidentally created an economic perpetual motion machine powered by inequality. Every country has interesting history, but Andorra's past reads like a collection of fairy tales that somehow became real. The most famous legend involves the country's creation through what might be history's most civilized territorial dispute. In 1278, the French Count of Foix and the Spanish Bishop of Urgell were arguing over control of Andorran valleys. Instead of going to war, they created the pareage, essentially the world's first time-sharing agreement for an entire country. They decided to rule jointly, with each taking turns as co-prince. This arrangement has survived for over 700 years, making it one of the world's oldest diplomatic agreements still in effect. But here's where it gets beautifully absurd. Today, one of Andorra's co-princes is Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, who probably spends more time thinking about global nuclear policy than the municipal planning of Andorran villages. The other co-prince is Joan Enric Vives Cecilia, a Catholic bishop whose day job involves spiritual guidance but who also has to make decisions about tax policy and international trade agreements. During World War II, Andorra managed to stay neutral in the most Andorran way possible. They declared war on Germany in World War I, then forgot to sign a peace treaty. Technically, Andorra remained at war with Germany for over 25 years, making it possibly the longest war in history with 0 casualties, 0 battles, and 0 awareness from either side that they were still fighting. The country's approach to modernization creates stories that sound like satire. When Andorra got its first elevator in 1960, it became a tourist attraction. People would travel from France and Spain just to ride the elevator up and down. The installation of the country's first traffic light in 1963 required a national ceremony because it represented Andorra's entry into the modern world. Perhaps the most incredible story involves Andorra's accidental discovery of its economic potential. In the 1960s, a Spanish businessman realized he could import goods duty-free into Andorra, then sell them to tourists at prices lower than anywhere else in Europe. This single realization transformed a collection of mountain villages into one of Europe's most important retail destinations. Before you start planning your move to this mountain paradise, here's the reality that travel blogs don't mention. Andorra might be one of the most expensive places to live in Europe, and getting residency is like trying to join an exclusive club that doesn't want new members. Housing costs in Andorra la Vella rival those in central Paris or Zurich. A modest two-bedroom apartment can easily cost 2,500 to 3,500 euros per month to rent, and purchasing property requires not just significant capital but also proof that you can contribute meaningfully to the Andorran economy. Many properties are sold before they're even advertised, often to buyers who've been on waiting lists for years. The residency requirements read like a checklist designed to exclude almost everyone. To obtain passive residency, which doesn't allow you to work, you must invest at least 400,000 euros in Andorra. This can be in real estate, government bonds, or a deposit in an Andorran bank. For active residency, which allows employment, you need a job offer from an Andorran company, proof of housing, comprehensive health insurance, and a clean criminal record from every country you've lived in for the past 5 years. But here's the catch that makes it truly exclusive. Even if you meet all the financial requirements, Andorra caps the number of new residencies granted each year. They literally have a quota system for new residents, treating immigration like membership to an exclusive country club. The language barrier adds another layer of complexity. While many international businesses operate in English, daily life requires functional Catalan, Spanish, or French. Government services, healthcare, and local businesses primarily operate in Catalan, a language that fewer than 10 million people worldwide speak fluently. Healthcare, while excellent, operates on a system that can confuse newcomers. Andorra has agreements with both French and Spanish healthcare systems, meaning you might receive treatment in 3 different countries depending on your needs. Emergency services are top-notch, but specialized care often requires travel to Barcelona or Toulouse. The social integration challenge is real and rarely discussed. Andorran society is incredibly tight-knit, with families that have lived in the same valleys for generations. As a newcomer, especially a wealthy immigrant, you might find yourself financially comfortable but socially isolated in a community where everyone else has decades of shared history. If moving to Andorra isn't realistic, and for 99.9% of people it isn't, experiencing this impossible country as a visitor reveals why it's become such a legendary destination for those in the know. The optimal time to visit is during the shoulder seasons, late spring or early fall, when the weather is perfect for hiking but the ski crowds haven't arrived. This is when you see Andorra at its most authentic, when the daily rhythm of local life isn't overwhelmed by seasonal tourism. Start your visit in Andorra la Vella, but don't make the mistake of treating it like a typical European capital. This is a city designed for walking, where the most interesting discoveries happen in the spaces between the obvious attractions. The historic quarter, Barri Antic, contains buildings that date back to the 12th century, but they're not museums. They're functioning parts of a living city where people work, shop, and live. The shopping experience here is unlike anywhere else in Europe, but approach it strategically. The main commercial avenue, Microstate, can feel overwhelming with its concentration of duty-free shops. Instead, explore the side streets where local artisans sell products that blend Catalan, French and Spanish influences in ways you won't find anywhere else. For the true Andorran experience, time your visit to coincide with one of the traditional festivals. The Festa Major in August transforms the entire country into a celebration that feels both ancient and completely contemporary. You'll witness traditions that have been practiced for centuries alongside modern interpretations that reflect Andorra's unique cultural fusion. The hiking opportunities reveal why people fall in love with this country beyond its economic advantages. The Coma Pedrosa Trail takes you to Andorra's highest peak, offering views that span 3 countries. But the real magic happens on the lesser-known trails, where you might hike for hours without seeing another person, yet never be more than a few kilometers from international banking centers. Dining in Andorra requires abandoning preconceptions about mountain cuisine. Yes, you'll find traditional hearty dishes designed for cold winters, but you'll also discover restaurants that blend French culinary techniques with Spanish ingredients and Catalan traditions, creating flavors that exist nowhere else. As our journey through this impossible country comes to an end, Andorra leaves you with questions that extend far beyond travel or economics. This tiny nation has somehow figured out how to exist in the modern world, while maintaining an identity that defies every rule about how countries are supposed to work. In an era of increasing nationalism and border walls, Andorra demonstrates that prosperity can come from embracing complexity rather than simplifying it. They've created a society where multiple languages, cultures, and nationalities don't just coexist. They create something entirely new and uniquely valuable. Perhaps most remarkably, Andorra proves that size doesn't determine significance. This country, which you could drive across in 40 minutes, has created economic and social innovations that much larger nations study and attempt to replicate. They've shown that being small can be a strategic advantage rather than a limitation. The exclusivity that makes Andorra impossible for most people to call home also preserves something precious. A model of how human communities can thrive when they're small enough for everyone to matter, wealthy enough to invest in quality of life, and diverse enough to avoid the insularity that often plagues small societies. Andorra challenges our assumptions about what countries should be and do. It's simultaneously ancient and modern, exclusive and welcoming, tiny and globally significant. It's a place where medieval political structures manage cutting-edge financial systems, where 3 cultures create something entirely new, and where the impossible has become everyday reality. In a world that often feels too large, too complex, and too divided, Andorra offers a different vision. A place where human-scale communities can still thrive, where cooperation creates more value than competition, and where being different isn't just accepted, it's the entire point. The next time someone tells you that small countries don't matter in the global economy, or that cultural diversity leads to conflict, or that you can't have both tradition and innovation, tell them about Andorra. Tell them about the impossible country that exists in the mountains between France and Spain, where fairy tales became economic policy and somehow created one of the most successful societies on Earth. What would you do if you could design a country from scratch, knowing everything we know now about economics, culture, and human nature? Andorra suggests that the answer might be smaller, more inclusive, and far more magical than we ever imagined possible.